Hi everyone, I'm Jo Barclay Loggie, and it's lovely to meet you if this is the first time that you're joining us. Some of you have been with me from the start. We're going to look at another demo today on a national beading stitch, and we've already looked at it briefly, but today we're going to take it and run with it a bit, and we're going to expand it. So I've already done a demo for you on the single St Petersburg chain, which looks a little like this. And today we're going to take that idea, take the St. Petersburg chain, and we're going to double it to something that looks like this. So you get that beautiful chevron shape running through your beadwork. It's such a fluid piece of jewelry to wear, and it just fits so beautifully around the wrist. It just hugs every shape that it's clinging to. So it's a great little technique. If you haven't done the single St. Petersburg chain, I'll pop a link in the description that you can follow and you can have a go at that. But you'll probably pick it up quite easily just watching this one as well. As usual, we'll start off by looking at everything that we're going to need to make this little project. So starting with the beads, I've got two colours of size 8 seed beads here. I've got my main colour, which is my Aqua Blue, and my accent colour, which is my Galvanised Silver. I've also got some size 11 seed beads that match my main colour, so they Aqua Blue. So that's 2 8s and 1 11. I've got a little random bead sitting there, that's going to be my stopper bead. I've got a clasp, size 10 beading needle. I'm actually using some 10-pound fire line today because the hole sizes in the beads is pretty generous, and I've got quite a lot of 10-pound fire line that I'm just going to try and use up. And I've got a thread zapper to cut my threads. Before we get started, I want to show you, when I did the single St. Petersburg chain, I did it in size 11 seed beads. The double I've done in 8. One, it's a lot easier for you to see what I'm doing if I'm using a bigger bead. But you'll also notice, so if we look at the 8, if I was to cover up half of it, that part there is the single St. Petersburg chain, and when I add the other side that makes that chevron shape, it is the double. But you'll also notice, so here in the single one, my main colour was the gold, my accent colour was the black. Here my main colour's the Aqua Blue, accent colour the silver. But you'll notice on the end of the silvers, I've got another little blue. That's where my size 11s come in. And I didn't do that little extra edging on the single one. When you're using smaller beads, there's not that much chance of thread showing on the outside here. But when you're using bigger beads, there is quite a bit of thread that can show on the outside of your accent colour. So by adding in this little edge of 11s on the outside, I'm just helping hide some of the thread. Now, to make this bracelet, you're going to want to thread on about 2.5 meters of your fire line. That's quite a long piece of thread to be working with, but hopefully it means you won't need to add any in. And when you see how we add the stopper bead, you'll see that although you're adding 2.5 meters of thread on, you're only working with about half of that for each side. So I've threaded my needle, and I'm going to pick up my stopper bead, pass it down to about halfway on my thread. I can sort that out in a minute. And to make it a stopper bead, I'm just going to pass the needle back through the bead from the base to the top. Pull it through. And this is where I'm going to try and make sure now that it's sitting in the middle of my thread. So I'm taking the two ends, the needle end and the tail end, and I'm putting them together. And then I can just slide the stopper bead to the halfway point. So it's very easy to slide that bead along your thread. And once you've got the middle point, you are ready to get going. So with St. Petersburg chain, we pick up 6 beads at a time. So I'm going to start with my main colour. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 of them. And I'm going to let them drop down to my stopper bead, which, as you remember, is sitting in the middle of my thread. Here's my long tail, the other side, which is the other half of the thread. So let's just look at these 6 quickly, and I'm going to count them as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the 6th bead is furthest away from the stopper bead. Now to start our St. Petersburg chain, we need to thread our needle back through beads 3 and 4. So I'm going back through number 3 and 4. Pull your needle all the way through, and as you pull through, you will see that you land up with 2 columns of beads. So I've got the first 4 on the left and the second 2 on the right. So now I'm going to pick up an accent bead, and I'm going to pick up a little 11. And I'm going to drop those down to my beadwork. The 11 is still sitting there at the top of my needle, but that's fine. I'm going to pass back down through the accent bead and 3 of those first 4 beads. And that little blue 11, you can see it sitting on top of the accent bead now, acts as a little stopper at the end of my accent bead. So I've beaded back towards myself, and I'm now going to turn and bead away from myself, but I need an accent color before I thread through the 2 beads that form the column on the right. So I've got 2, and if you remember I started with 6, so I need to pick up another 4 of my main color. 1, 2, 3, 4. As I said, I do have a tutorial for single St. Petersburg chain. You'll find the link in the description, and that will go into this section of St. Petersburg in a bit more detail, because what we're doing here is the single chain. So again, I've got my 6. Going from my accent bead, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I need to pass my needle back through number 3 and 4 so that I get my 2 columns of beads again. Pull your needle through, and when I move my fingers out the way, you'll see I'm back to a column of 4 and a column of 2. So I pick up my accent and my little 11 that forms the stopper on the edge of my accent bead, drop them down and go back through the accent bead and 3 of my main colors. There's my little blue 11. Always seems to get stuck on the end of the needle. Now I'm going to turn and bead away from myself, or my accent beads are doing a runner on my board here. Not my accents, my number 11s. Pick up an accent bead and pass back up through the 2 8s that form the column on the right. So I've now really started my single St. Petersburg chain. My thread is exiting those 2. I need 6 to begin with, so I'm picking up another 4. Drop them down. Pass the needle back through the 3rd and 4th beads so that you form your 2 columns of beads. Then you need to add the accent on the top plus your little 11. Drop them down, and we skip over that 11 and we pass through the accent and 3 of the main colors as you bead back in the direction towards yourself. And we're now going to turn and bead away from ourselves, and we're going to pick up 1 accent bead and bead through the 2 beads on the right. And you're ready to start that process again. So I'm going to do it once more with you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoops. Added to the 2 that are already there makes up my 6. Pass the needle back through number 3 and 4 to make your 2 columns. Then you're going to pick up your accent bead and a little 11 to go on the end of it. skip over the 11, pass back through the accent, and 3 of your main color beads. And now you're ready to turn and bead the other way. So you pick up an accent bead and pass through the 2 on the right. Now you're going to continue doing exactly this, so the single St. Petersburg chain, until you have a length long enough to go around your wrist, and then we're going to add in the other side using the piece of thread that's on the other side of your stopper bead. So you continue doing that, and I'll come back to you when I've got enough of a length. To save a bit of time, I'm only going to do a little stretch of this because it's very repetitive the whole way through. So you're going to pretend that I've done a strip of beadwork that's long enough to go around my wrist, remembering to stop short so that there's space to add on your clasp. Your clasp quite often adds on a whole extra inch to your beadwork, so don't bead this strip too long. So this is where I've ended up at the top here. I turned, added an accent bead and passed through the 2 beads that were on the column on the right. I've slipped my stopper bead off the end of this other half of thread, and I've popped a needle onto the end. So you'll see this is now loose here. This 1 bead can move about, but don't worry about that, because once you start beading up this side here, it's going to be held in place. So this is the corner here where we are now turning to start beading this half of our St. Petersburg chain. So just as before, just get my needle in the right place, we're going to pick up 6 to start off with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And they're dropping down to my other beads, but I don't want to get them muddled up with the other row. So I'm going to count back from the top. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And again, I'm passing through number 3 and 4. So pass the needle back through the 3rd and 4th beads of the new 6 that you've just picked up. And again, you're going to pull your thread through and you will have 2 columns that have started there. And just as we did on the other side, we're going to pick up 1 accent color and a little 11. And I'm going to drop those all the way down to my beadwork. And I'm going to skip over the 11 and pass through the accent and 3 of my main color, just as I did before. But now this is where the change happens, because we want to get that lovely V shape, that arrowhead or chevron shape. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip this so that the column of 2 is now on the left-hand side of your work rather than on the right. And instead of picking up an accent bead to turn and go through those 2 on the left, I'm going to use the accent bead that's already there in the middle. So I pass through the accent bead and then up through the 2 beads on that left-hand column. And I will move my fingers out the way once I've pulled this thread through, and you can see how you've got your first little V shape. Right, so now we're ready to continue. I am exiting a column of 2. I need 6, so I'm going to pick up 4 more. Drop them down. And again, I'm going to be passing back through beads 3 and 4. Form my 2 columns. Doesn't matter that it's sitting on that side, because it's very easy to just flip them over to the other side, and you can see exactly where you're going to be passing the needle through. So I'm exiting my 4. I'm going to pick up my accent and my 11, drop them down, pass the needle back through the accent and 3 of my main colors, just as I was doing on the other side. And to now connect the two sides together, I'm going to pass the needle up through the accent bead that's in the middle. And then I need to go up through the two beads that form the column on the left, because I've flipped them around to the center. So up through those two. I'm trying not to move my beadwork too much so that you can see exactly where things stay. And that's why I'm looking a little clumsy with my beads. So if I pop that down, you can see how my double is really starting to take effect. I'm exiting the 2, I need to pick up 4. I need to pass back through the 3rd and 4th ones, those 2 there, to form my 2 columns of beads. See, there's that little gap there? Not a problem, because this is like a stopper bead. You just slide it back down with your fingernails to the other beads, and then it sits snugly up against them. Pick up an accent and a little 11. Drop them down. Pass the needle back through the accent bead and 3 of your main color beads. That is flipped around, but if I put it the right way, you'll be able to see exactly where we're going now. Through the accent bead that's in the middle. And you can probably go through the accent bead and the 2 beads that form the column of 2 in one step, but I'm just trying to hold it all in the same place. And through, there are my 2 that form the column of 2. And when you pull your thread through tight, it really pulls it all into place, so you can see how beautifully that double St. Petersburg stitch is working. So I'm going to continue up to that end, and then I'm going to show you how to add on the clasp. It's really, really easy. I'm very close to the end now and to adding in my clasp. I've just added my last little accent bead and an 11, and I've passed back through the accent and 3 of my main colors. And I just need to do my last little flip of the column of 2. I'm going to pass through that last accent color in the middle and up through the little column of 2 that's now on the left. So unfortunately, when you do this, you end up with both your threads at one end of your work. So you will need to end both off and join one on to this end to add the other half of your clasp. So I'm up here at this end over here. My thread, I'm going to ignore the left hand side for now. My thread is exiting the 2. It's so simple. I'm going to pick up 2 of my accent colors. I'm going to drop them down. I'm going to pass through one end of my toggle clasp and the accent bead that is closest to my toggle. So the second bead I picked up. I'm going to pick up one more accent, and as I was coming out of the V on the right, I'm going to pass down the V on the left. So I'm going to come down through those over there, and if I pop that down, you'll see it's a really neat finish, adding your toggle onto the top of your work there. You're then going to just end this thread off by threading through your beads. You can thread up and down through the V of the St. Petersburg stitch. You'll end off the thread on the left hand side as well, and then at the other end, at the V here, you just exit one of the beads in the middle and add the bar of your toggle, if you've chosen to use a toggle, in exactly the same way. So have fun experimenting with colors. For the accent bead, instead of using an 8 like I've done here, why don't you try using a fire polish bead or a bicone, just to add a bit of interest to your double St. Petersburg stitch. So if you've got any questions, please pop them below. I do check regularly and get back to people when they've got questions, so just pop them below and I'll answer you as soon as possible. If you've enjoyed the video, please hit the subscribe button, because there is lots more to come, and that way you won't miss out on a tutorial. For example, you may have missed out on that one initially. So by hitting the subscribe button, it just means that the next time that you log on to YouTube, there'll be a little alarm bell in the right hand corner that tells you that I've uploaded some new content, and you can have a look and see if it's something that interests you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.